Yeah.
I just chucked him down a load of food. So
What is this? What is this? The archaeology classes of the Neolithic cats?
yeah. Well, he hasn't paid, has he? So
Oh my God, Andy! Oh,
Thoughts in his head.
there is a bit of a problem. Nobody actually owes me any money this month, so Andy, you can't really wind me up on that one.
oh, I'm sorry.
I could remind you with the fact that in May I'll be chasing you for money again. Does that count?
Yeah, could do, but as you're sideways, it doesn't count.
My birthday in May,
Am
so
I
I shouldn't
sideways?
have to pay, should I?
Yeah, you that's it. Now, yeah, right way around again now.
Mm.
What's going on, Andy? Just say something.
I don't know.
It's all gone wrong.
You were jumping all over the spot.
Who was?
You were.
Oh, right, okay. Right, okay. So, Andy, you haven't got any news. Okay, then fair enough. Oh, okay, so we're going to start next. Anne, have you got any news for us this week?
None at all. I'm sorry.
I'm really hoping somebody has. Adam, come on, Adam, tell us about your love life.
Oh, okay. No news there, I'm afraid.
All right, then, fair enough. So have you got any news on the archaeological front at all?
None there. My head's been so in my dissertation that that's taken up my whole brain capacity, I'm afraid.
All right, then. Okay, fair enough. Right, okay, who else have we got? David, anything you'd like to tell us this week? David?
No, thank you.
You notice I'm doing this slightly in alphabetical order. So after D must be Margaret, you see?
Yeah.
Go on.
Well, I was just watching before I came on a documentary about Canterbury Cathedral. And do you know how much it costs a day for the upkeep of Canterbury Cathedral? £18,500 a day.
Hang on, start again. Canterbury Cathedral takes to maintain £18,500 a day.
£18,500 a day.
So what does that include then? Obviously, gas, electricity, water, and how many members of staff?
God knows.
I'll just jump in here.
Yeah, go on.
Because I live right next door to Canterbury, and I work just opposite, and they've got scaffolding up all the time. They're always renewing the stonework, but I think they've got to deal with the site's been sold off to the French. I don't know how true that is, but I think that when the work stops, that's when the deal is finalised. So they've got. Hang on.
So what you're saying, they're selling Canterbury Cathedral to France to rebuild the Notre Dame. Is that right?
Something like that.
Well, at the moment, the refurbishments are costing 25 million.
Well, if it's anything like HS2, it'll be 200 million by the time they've finished. Right. Okay, Margaret. I don't know where the hell we've gone with that. My head's just I found it astounding that it would cost so much a day. Hang on. Have a man said that about you, that it cost you £18,000 to maintain you?
It only costs about 80p for me.
All right, fair enough. I knew there was an 8 in there, love.
You're selling yourself short, Margaret.
I think so.
Yeah, take it up to £1.
Okay.
Oh God, this is just too. This is actually too much to cope with. Right, okay then. Who else have we got? Right, the only one left is well, there's there's Pat, and then Pete.
No, not from me.
Hang on a minute. I asked Pat first, not you.
Oh, all right then.
I didn't know. Okay, I have something this time.
Wait.
Oh, that's nice.
Get it off your chest now.
Can you see?
Move it over towards your face.
Oh, okay.
Neolithic pottery. Love it.
Yes, 2200 to 700 or something like that. Yeah, I'll try again to see if I can get gallery. There we are. Okay, now I take this up there and
oh, nice.
I went to St. Fagans.
Yeah. Oh, they're pretty clear. Yeah, you went to St. Fagans. When did you go there?
Friday.
Oh,
Yeah.
they're nice.
It was really good. They have 3 galleries upstairs because we just
Yeah.
went to the museum bit, and they were kind of mushmash. You'd have Vikings, and then you'd have Neanderthals, and then you'd have bones, and then you'd have the Abervan, tragedy, and so. But they're all in nice cupboards and cabinets, and you can look at it all. There's 2 big rooms, and the 3rd room was all to do with sport. So my friend and I, we just skipped the sport, but we saw the other 2 galleries. There was just lots of stuff. There was gold,
Oh, I like
Mhm.
times, yeah.
gold.
all Welsh, all Wales. So that was exciting, So, and there was this thing here. Let's see, where is it? How do I do it? Oh God, that's where to go.
Actually, if you put it sideways on, we might get a bigger picture, even though the last one was pretty good.
Yeah.
But back a bit towards you.
Yeah.
That's perfect. But stop.
Oh, lovely.
Tell us.
Yeah.
Tell us.
Isn't that pretty? Yeah, let's
Yeah,
see.
no, it is.
I think I got the stuff below it. I hope. Oh God. Let's see. Yes, here it is. It says, this early Bronze Age. Sorry, it's slow here. I'll turn it this
Don't
way.
worry. Fine. We got a minute.
Lunula, Lunula, was discovered in Peat by the river near, it's in North Wales. It's 2200 to 2000 BCE. Yes. So, do you know what a lunula? Lunula. I have to look it up.
Lunula. It's basically moon shaped.
A what?
Moon shaped. Sort of crescent moon shaped.
Moon what?
Moon shaped.
Shaped. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
It's always sort of shaped like a moon. Yeah.
Yeah. That's what that means.
But
I should just say moon shaped. It just makes it so much easier.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. So anyhow, I had a great time there because there was all sorts of Viking, spears and recreations of people, what they looked like back then. Oh God, let's see where there he is.
There it is. Nice, got it.
Yeah.
Who are we looking at, Dave?
And look, he had sort of a skinny nose. You think, oh, he's ancient, so he must have a big fat nose, but no, he didn't.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, from the bones they reconstructed it.
Yeah.
And,
no, that's good.
Yeah, it was really good. Yeah. So
I'm glad you had a good time.
I
How long did
recommend
it
it.
take?
They got a nice tea shop too. And sticky
Well,
buns,
that counts. That's nothing else.
and a gift shop.
Oh, wow.
For £4, you could buy a little booklet that talks about your family. If your family is Porter or Miller, something English. They have little booklets that talks about your heritage. So I'm going to send one to California. My friend her name was Miller, so send it over.
Cool. Anyway, thanks for that, Pat.
Yeah.
So anyway, thanks for that contribution. So this week we are well into it. It's 7:51, and I would like to say that I think what we're going to call these evenings, we are doing a Neolithic. But it's like a Neolithic evening, a Neolithic experience. So I just want to, I want to sort of, I think what we've been doing recently, we've been sort of doing a little bit here, a little bit there, and I seem to be, it seems to be flowing instead of sort of big chunks of things here and there. So I'm liking that we're breaking this up a lot more and sort of mixing a little bit with the Bronze Age, with the Neolithic, and so on. And it sort of gives you a bit of a texture of a little bit of a transitional period that we're sort of very much into when we're looking at the Neolithic, and then it flows into the Bronze Age, and the dates are a bit blurred. We're sort of liking that. So today we've got a standing stone that I wanted to bring you a few weeks ago, and it's a standing stone outside Bridgend in South Wales. I've been going on about it. It's a standing stone that you can sort of see from the motorway if you want to crash your car while you're driving. and it's a standing stone that me and Pat have been to.
Oh, yes.
And we're going to start off with something really bizarre, though. And I just got a little bit of a story. I mentioned this last week as well. So those two things we're going to look at to begin with. And then the next thing we're going to look at the Barrow Diggers part 6. I can't remember. Part 5, part 6, one or the other. I'm sure Margaret's written it down. She can tell me it's part 5 or 6. And then we've got a little galleons with reconstructed archaeology, and we go to Butser, and there's a statement that I want to make at the end, and I want to discuss it. So this is the 4th thing. So 5th actually. So it goes. This statement goes as follows. Ritual is a reaction to previous behavior. So read that again. Ritual is a reaction to previous behavior, and that you can think about that, right? And then at the end we'll discuss that. Oh God, I'm worn out already. And next week we're going to be
David's
looking
tried to contact you, I
Who?
believe. I think David's tried to contact you.
No,
Oh, you're not? I thought you were. Sorry.
no, sorry.
You
I'm on full
managed it.
flow there, Anne. I'm going to burn you at a stake in a minute. Right. And next week we're going to be looking at Otzi the Iceman. Now, when you think about Otzi the Iceman, you say Bronze Age. However, he's over 5,000 years old. Which puts him in our Neolithic period. But Otzi the Iceman is actually from Europe, so we're going to chuck him in. We're chucking him in next week. So we're going to be doing Otzi the Iceman next week. That'll be rather interesting. So, without further ado, we need to look at some images, and David can butt in anytime he likes. Anne, you don't have to tell me that. You can't. You're banned. Right. Okay. So here we go. Oh, hang on. I did press the button. Right. So basically, where we're going to go in a little while, we're going to look at. When we look at the our Barrow Diggers, we're going to actually go to Peak District. We're going to go to Peakland, and there it is. We're going to go to the Peak District. So that's where we're going to go this week, and it's really unusual because when we've been looking at the Barrow Diggers, we've been obsessed with the south, but we have mentioned the north a few times. But we're going to look at Bateman and a certain guy called Samuel Pegg. And there's an interesting thing about Samuel Pegg. He seems to have nailed the archaeology before people in the south. So we don't need HS2 to enlighten the people of the north. They can enlighten us. I thought I'd chuck that in there. So what we are going to do, as promised, we're going to go quickly through all the images that we're going to look at today. So there we go. Bingo, Butser. We're going to look at Butser at the end. Bit of Butser. We're going to look at these guys, a few nice images. Look at their Bateman. There you go. That's a nice reconstructed image, by the way. We're going to look at that one. These guys, we're going to go there. Pegg, there he is. Not the actor Samuel Pegg, but another Pegg. He's as ugly as that anyway. That standing stone, which Pat remembers, and there it is, that one. And the weird thing is, I tell you what, it's taken me three or 4 weeks to find this stone. It's called the Samson stone, actually, and there's a Welsh name for it as well, which is the Teen Cellar stone. Teen Cellar stone. Well, that's really interesting because the word cellar, that's wrong, because the word cellar in Welsh is SELAR or ER. So anyway, that's what we're going to look at, and we're going to look at that, and we're going to go here. Woo! A back of envelope. We don't need that. Right. So we're going to go to this.
The leisure
We're going to go
center.
to this. Yes, this is the one in Bridgend, Pat. You are right.
Yes. Yeah, I remember this one.
Now, the interesting thing is that I think I've taken Pat here with some of the Bridgend people, but this is in a part of Bridgend is in South Wales. It's basically a big town in South Wales for those who don't know it, and it's all built up. And what we do know about Bridgend is that it's in the heart of a very rich prehistoric landscape. There's a burial chamber in a place called Coity. There's another one which is near an industrial estate in Bridgend as well. There's other bits and things around the outside and whatever. And there's this stone itself that was actually where the old allotment used to be, which is about 100 yards away, right? And some bright spark decided in the, remind me, Pat, 1960s, wasn't it? Early 1960s.
Yeah.
So a local councillor, and I when I used the word bright spark, I didn't mean it that way. I meant a local councillor said, well, you're going to build on this site. I want us to save the stone. And the council said, you can move it. And which is really odd. So what they could have done, they could have left the stone there and that would have been fine. But they decided to lift up the stone. They decided to move it 100 meters away. And there was a burial associated with this. And so on. And the point is, this stone itself is a very odd stone because it's been moved. And I'm going to say it, Pat, right? It just doesn't make any sense because it's like, it's lost this context. Yeah, okay, Pat, what we're going to do, we're going to move the Tower of London to Glasgow. Why? Yeah, I know that sounds ridiculous, but what I'm trying to get at is if you're gonna have a monument like this, it needs to be where it was, and it needs to be connected to the earth. It needs to be connected to why it was placed there, and not why we've placed it there. And I know Dorothy in the Bridgend class would probably be a little bit angry, saying, you know, why are you critical of this? At least it was saved. Well, I think it should have remained where it was, and they could have just built up around it. It would have been fine, and it would have been doing no harm. And then when those buildings are pulled down and rebuilt and all the rest of it, the stone's still there. And this is my dalliance with how I really struggle with the mindset of people in Britain, and the mindset of people in Britain. We just feel that we can move things and then it's all right. It's a bit like HS2. What we'll do, we'll move all the trees over there and the animals will just move over there. And what we'll do, we'll cut down these oak trees that are 1,500 years old. And hopefully if we plant another 1,000 oak trees, it'll be okay, right? It's the same with archaeological sites. What we'll do, we'll put a tunnel under Stonehenge, and it'll be fine. And it buggers up with all the water courses and all the energies and stuff, and it's okay. But the councillor who had this stone moved, he was up against it. He basically was told, oh, we'll just flatten the whole thing. The stone will be broken up. And he said, oh, please, let us move the stone. Well, that's what happened. And I got to be honest with you, Pat, if that was the only alternative, then that was fine. However, that shouldn't have been the only alternative, Pat. And it's like, it would have been great for it to have remained where it was originally. It's a bit like, okay, I don't want to spend too much time on this because I want to get to the other stone. It's a bit like it's a bit like this. You know, it's a bit like the Mithras Temple in London when it was dug up in the middle 1950s, 1956. They where the Bloomsbury building is today, right? They decided we'll move the whole temple down the road, right? And years later, over in the past decade, they thought, right, we'll move the temple back to its original spot. And now it's underneath the Bloomsbury building, and you can go down underground, and you can actually see the original place where the Mithras temple was in the first place. Why did they move it in the first place? So our connections with history and archaeology in Britain don't seem to make sense. It's almost as if we can move history. You can't move history. History is always where it was meant to occur and meant to happen. It's a bit like sort of Richard III Centre will chuck a museum up where the body was found. Well, that's brilliant. That's what you should be doing. Anyway, I just thought I'd chuck that in there. It's sort of food for thought. There is a reason why I put that in there, but it's a little worm food for thought. What we're going to do, we're going to move to the next image. And this, interestingly enough, there's a little bit of Jen there, which we'll read out together. And this is this is the TV, which would mean black house or black stone. Tin e cellar, or cellar SELAR, or SELER, which should be the Welsh, because that word cellar is English. I hate it when I do that. And basically there it is. It's basically alongside the motorway, and that for me is really interesting that it's actually there, very close to the motorway.
Carl,
Now, yeah,
Carl, I can't hear you very well.
is everybody hearing me very well?
Yeah.
Yeah,
You're,
I
you're a
can.
bit quiet. You're a bit quiet. I can hear you, but you could be a bit louder. They could help.
Can I be a bit louder? How's that sounding for you?
No, it's not very
David-
loud.
No, that
David
was
just-
worse.
Yeah.
What?
That was quieter. I actually
Yes,
thought you
it
were
was
louder
quieter.
before. But
Right, okay. So how am I sounding now? I can't do it. I don't know what to do.
I could
Right, hang on.
only just hear you.
Okay, what I'm going to do, what you need to do is put your volume up on your thingamajig. But what I'm going to see, what I'm going to do, right, is be good, right? David and Andy can hear me. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to take that off a minute. We'll go back to the images in a minute. I'm just going to, I've muted myself, and I've just muted myself again. Oh, hang on. I've just cut everybody off. Back to meeting. Right, okay. I don't know what to do. Is anyone else getting problems hearing me?
You've gone quiet, eh?
Oh dear.
Oh my God, you made it worse.
No, I can hear you fine.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah.
I can just hear you, but I am going a bit deaf.
Oh, for God's sake, Margaret, you're doing my head in.
Sorry, I can just about hear you.
Oh, yes.
Did you hear that?
I can hear you, but it's just not very loud.
Right, okay, okay. Why don't you look? Try and put your sound up on your computer, your little doodah. All right. I might sound. I will raise my voice a little bit so that you can hear me. Okay, Margaret.
That's okay.
Oh yeah, it's fine for you, and it's just going to muck up my voice box, and nobody can hear me tomorrow, and it's all your fault.
It's okay. Carry on. It's okay.
You know, she hates it when I have a go at her.
Oh, she's still there. Mm.
Who? What's going on? I think since Margaret said this, it's all gone wrong. Right. Okay. So what we are next to, and if anyone can't hear me, all you've got to do is put the volume switch up on me, because I will just put my thingamajig up. That stone there is a stone that me and Pat have actually visited, wandering across the field. And one of the things is out there is that occasionally what you do get is bits of archaeology from bits of archaeology in the middle of nowhere. Bits of archaeology that happen to be like this stone there. It is alongside the motorway, basically. And if you're a passenger in a car and you're driving along, you can actually see this big standing stone there. It's great. So this is that stone. It's known as Samson's stone. That's another name for it. And one of the wonderful things is I know, again, you've got to remind me whether we're meant to be doing the Neolithic period, but I actually think this stone belongs probably in the. Hang on, what's going on?
you need to mute David. He's doing something.
Yeah.
Right, I got to go back off this again. Oh my God.
Oh,
Right, okay, I got to go back off, and I've got to. Oh, this is done. Here we go. Let's just. Oh God. Right, there is somebody else with the thing here that they can sort of assist me by muting and stuff. Okay, so. Oh God. And then we got 5 people watching online. They don't know what's going on, and now the whole thing's gone wrong. Right. Okay. Right. going back to this stone, when we looked at the stone, it was rather interesting because it looked like it had been worked in a way that it replicated wood. I can remember us looking at the stone, and I can't remember the exact angle, but it was a rather interesting way that this stone had been carved. And for me, it's too big a stone to actually relate to the Bronze Age. It's a very big stone that I believe relates to the Neolithic period. And I've been talking about this for ages. And the real point I've been wanting to make about this stone is that you get oddments here and there. And usually when you get oddments here and there, they are the epitome of me saying that they are the survivors of a landscape which would have had a lot more of these stones, which would have had a lot more of these monuments over different periods dotted across the landscape. We've only got little bits left. And I'm going to make a little bit of a statement. If anyone's looking for First World War battlefield and trenches across Belgium and France, you can't find many now because they're all filled in. And that's within sort of more or less living memory. So if within our living memory in the past 100 years, we can almost obliterate signs of a major military conflict, which was so bloody and with new weapons of war and all the rest of it, it has completely scarred the landscape at that stage. But lots of that stuff has gone back to normal world. If you think about this, if monuments were erected 5, 6, 7,000 years ago, you know, it's amazing that lots of these things have actually survived. And that is the point I'm trying to make. Again, there it is smack bang in the middle of a field. And it's big enough to actually hide behind when the tractor's going through the field, when the farmer's going through the field with a tractor and we haven't actually have permission to be there. So it says about this monument, I'm going to quickly do this anyway. The monument comprises the remains of a standing stone, which probably, this is the word probably, dates to the Bronze Age. The stone is an undressed boulder, approximately rectangular section. So I'm going to go with it possibly being Neolithic, 5,000 years ago, 3,000 years BC. It's probably there. It measures 1.4 meters long by 0.9 meters at the base, increasing to 1.6 meters long at a height of 0.7 meters. The top slopes from 2.5 meters high at the southeast to 2.1 meters at the northwest. So in other words, it's 2.5 meters high. Description was too complex, actually. 2.5 meters high is quite a tall stone. And obviously, the stone is an undressed boulder. Well, not really sure about the word undressed there. The monument is of national importance for its potential to enhance our knowledge of prehistoric burial and ritual practice. Come out of that and come back in a moment. Any monuments of this age are protected. End of story, because they're very, very rare. It is an important relic of a prehistoric funerary and ritual landscape. We'll go with ritual landscape, well, I am anyway, and retains significant archaeological potential. There is a strong probability of the presence of intact burial or ritual deposits, together with environmental and structural evidence. Standing stones are often part of a larger cluster of monuments, and their importance can further enhanced by their group value. So it's saying that there might be more around. It might be part of a rich landscape. The scheduled area comprises the remains described and areas around them within which related evidence may be expected to survive. So that's giving you another idea. So when you think about these monuments, they don't come alone, right? There's always other stuff there. It's not just the stone. There's more about this whole story than meets the eye, right? So this is again thinking about the prehistoric period as being more than just what you're seeing. And I think last week when we looked at souterrains, and actually I've found some images of souterrains which I've got on the on the phone, actually on the phone, which I haven't put over to this one, but they were the ones from Carn Yenny in Cornwall. That's not right. can't you? Yeah, whatever. Anyway, so I got them. I found them anyway. That's from last week. So the point I wanted to make. Sorry, I got myself lost there. The point I wanted to make is that we've got the upstanding buildings that you're seeing. We've got the stuff underneath the surface that we don't know about, and we've got these wonderful things like souterrains and other things that we haven't described so far by looking at the Neolithic period. So what we're going to do now is so Margaret doesn't get too confused and upset, we're going to be looking at, oh, hang on, barrow diggers. But before that, I just want to show you these nice black and white ones. And I can remember thinking when I looked at these, it's almost as if, that's right, that's what I want to show you. It's almost as if that looks bark-like. It's almost as if that replicates tree, the bark on the tree. And the other side, it's just showing something rather different. However, it's just might be just normal texture of the stone, but it does look really bark-like. And I can remember getting very excited about that and saying to Pat and whoever else was with me, that looks very bark-like. And it's the one thing about the Neolithic period that I will say is that you know, the Neolithic period is a huge level of contradictions and contrasts. When one minute they're building out of stone, but when you look at something like Stonehenge, some of the stones again seem to replicate the bark on trees. When you've got the way that they've actually been, you know, the capstones on them using tongue and groove and mortise and tenon type joints for the capstones, you're thinking that these people built out of stone because there wasn't much timber around to build these monuments, or is it because they wanted to make these things more permanent, or as I say, permanent is to build them out of timber? So lots of sort of contradictions, but then again, the Neolithic period is a long period in time. So what we're going to do now, we're going to look at our peatland pioneers. And this man is a guy, guess what? He's a reverend. Well, you can guess that. Reverend Samuel Pegg, not an actor, by the way. He lived the ripe old age of 92. And he was born in 1704 at 12:15 and died in 1796. He was a cleric and an antiquary who opened burial mounds in his native Derbyshire and wrote some of the earliest commentaries on the Khans of the Peak. And you're just thinking, well, oh God, this guy's got to be like the others. But he's not. In many ways, this guy is more of a revolutionary than some of the others that we've actually looked at. So, you know, when we think about this, and we try to understand, and we need to sort of try and get a connection with what these people felt and understood about their history and archaeology. But before we go into massively into Samuel Pegg, there's, if you can remember, a publication called Barrow Diggings, published in the 1800s. A certain Reverend Stephen Isaacson wrote, here we go. A worthy fellow labourer to Hall has sprung up in this hitherto neglected quarter of England, qualified in every respect to rescue from oblivion her buried treasures, and restore her to the position to which she is entitled among the important locations of the earliest settlers of this island, in the person of Thomas Bateman, Junior Esquire, in whose labours we have been permitted to participate, and in whose success we rejoice. So you can see a little bit of politics there, can't you? They're just saying, you know, what about us? You know, what about us up north, you know? We've got a bit of history and archaeology. It's not all about bloody Stonehenge, and we've got our below. What have you got? The way we are going to mention, we've got to mention, and we'll go to our Samuel Pegg, and then we go to another chap called Hayman Rook. And then we sort of come back to Samuel Pegg, and we look at this guy called Rook, all these wonderful, wonderful names that spring out. And, you know, there's so many, in fact, there's so many people working in the middle part of the country that it's almost missed in a way from the history book. You know, we're looking at sketches and illustrations and all these types of things. Another wonderful, there's Al Bateman, and there's one of Bateman's little sort of reminders that he's been digging somewhere, just like lots of these individuals in the South have been doing. And it's sort of that reliquary to history that we need to think that there is a lot more going on in the country. It's a lot more than just Stonehenge in the Neolithic. So Bateman, who, there we go, there he is again. Bateman stands high among the big four diggers of the 1800s, prehistoric barrow diggers. And the group of diggers contains two names that we haven't come across yet: Greenwell and Dibonium of Mortimer. But we've come across Colt Hoare already. So you can imagine that there's so much more about this topic and the magnitude of operations that give us lots of the information that we rely upon today to try and understand the Neolithic and the Bronze Age, and earlier and much later information about this world. When we think about this, we're developing terminology to describe the history and archaeology. And Bateman is one of those. Bateman also followed the traditions established by those of his fellow countrymen who had gone before. We talked about Samuel Pegg, a Major Hayman Rook, like he's somebody who we will mention, and Samuel Mitchell and his own father, William Bateman. And that's a really interesting that we mention Bateman's father so earlier on, because when people are really into history and archaeology back in the day, it's a family affair. And, you know, you'll see whole dynasties of archaeologists. You know, I've always thought, wouldn't it be great that one of my children would take on board archaeology? None of them are faintly interested at all in anything that I do regarding history and archaeology. So that's not going to happen. But we think about family and son teams, and then husbands and wife diggers. When we look at the likes of the Wheeler family in the 1930s, and we think about Flinders Petrie and his wife, and so on. Pegg, White, Watson, and Rook were among the earliest to dig into the rich collection of Peak District burial mounds, henceforward referred to as cairns, since they were almost all constructed of piles of heaped up stones. That's a really, again, we're reminded of barrows in the south of earth, barrows in the north of stone, hence cairns. But when we watch programs like Time Team, or we see Alice Roberts, they use the word cairns and dolmens and barrows and this and that. They're basically all names for more or less the same type of things. It's just that we use these words in different ways. Cairns, heaped up stones. Going back to our Pegg. Samuel Pegg, a cleric from Chesterfield, who lived to an advanced age, was amongst the earliest investigators to probe the cairns of the Derbyshire Peak, communicating the results of his discoveries to Archaeologia and the Gentleman's Magazine. If you've never come across the Gentleman's Magazine, that's a bit of a first. That's the only reference that I've come across in reading this. But the main thing is they're actually publishing their wares. And again, their wares are published and we can see them today. Whereas I see people doing archaeological work and metal detecting, and they say, look what I found, you know, and then you press the wrong button and it's gone. Well, you can't press a button and get rid of Archaeologia and the Gentleman's Magazine and what he gave us. He added practical experience to offset mere conjecture, produced plans of his sites and sketches of his finds. His distinctions into the lows of the high peak in archaeology.
Oh, you've come home.
Yes, I brought cake. It's carrot cake.
That was a bit of a shock. Oh, God. Is everyone hearing me?
Yeah.
I was
Yep,
in full
yep.
flow.
Yep.
I was in full flow then, and I thought, come on. Andy, naughty boy.
Sorry, had someone walk in on me.
That's all right. So basically, he's what this man is doing. He's attempting to discuss not just the mounds. He's discussing the distribution and types of monuments across Derbyshire in the 1700s. Now, the reason why this guy is so intriguing, you know, with all the other barrow diggers that we've looked at, they seem to be interested in just the barrows. They seem to be interested in maybe some drawing plans and digging 50 in a day or whatever, and trying to find artifacts, and some others were making a distinction with layers. This guy was actually looking at distribution and the differences in the monuments. Well, I know you could say that William Stukeley was doing the same thing, and William Stukeley was around at this same time as this guy. But this guy was not really off his head like Stukeley became. This guy was very much into mapping archaeology. That is important because, you know, it's one thing that makes archaeology what it is today when we start to correlate things on maps. And the best thing can be said with Madgaray's work, Roman roads in the 60s and 70s, where he mapped all these sort of alignments of this and that, the mile posts and where there could be Roman roads and all the rest of it. Looking at distribution, he did a book on Madgaray's book on Roman roads, which I've got a copy of. Really interesting book. But this itself is a guy in the 1700s who's actually offering us a sense of distribution and allowing all the loose ends to come together. Oxford University recognized the importance of his contributions in many spheres, and you know, he actually ended up with a doctorate in 1791 because of it, which is great. And we mentioned the site, you know, the site of Arborough. And the site of Arborough is the next site that we sort of look at in a moment, right? But I just wanted to mention this. I'm going to show some images. This here, this is actually produced by the man that we're going to come up with now, Hayman Rook. As early as 1782, we'll come back to Peg in a moment. As early as 1782, Hayman Rook, who lived a fairly interesting age, 1723 to 1806, so he's in his 80s, had driven 2 sections across the huge cairn built into the bank of Arborough, Henge Monument, an undertaking that took him 5 days. Well, that's a good thing, as long as it didn't take him an hour, as the other diggers were doing in the south. An almost unheard of length of time for a barrow digger in the 1700s. That's an interesting point. And he goes on to draw these types of monuments. He goes on to draw these types of things. This is actually from Stanton Moor in Derbyshire, right? But when we're talking about this, is again this interesting point that he's spending days digging rather than an hour, right? And with the days digging, he's given us a better picture of the landscape, which our peg is thinking about within the likes of distribution. These are guys up north, you know, they're doing something up north, which is, oh God, do I say this? Do I whisper this to you? That's a lot more advanced than the people are doing in the south, but we don't want to talk about that. We don't want to talk about that because, you know, people in the south always seem to get the glory. This Khan, the one at Arbelo and nearby Gib Hill, we mentioned Gib Hill as well, I can remember that, because of their proximity to Arbelo, an almost magnetic attraction for an early Derbyshire antiquarian until Bateman solved their secrets in the 1840s. And another thing, people are going back working on earlier work because they've got questions raised by the earlier diggers like Rook, which is interesting. Now, the point is, if Rook didn't write up his stuff, then the likes of Bateman wouldn't have gone back in the 1840s to try and understand more about what Rook was doing. Rook himself was nicknamed the Resurrection Major. Bloody hell, the military titles, Resurrection Major, by the local gentry. Dug at a number of other sites, and the results of his work and his field observations can be read in early issues of Archaeologia or in his neat, precise field sketchbooks in Sheffield Museum. Right, this is all in the 1700s. This is, you know, he dies in 1806, so it's all in the 1700s. Some of his contributions appear in Douglas's great work, which is another story altogether. They show an acute perception and precision in description and illustration, like we've got here. Like this is actually printed in Archaeologia rather than the work of Douglas. Not surprisingly, earlier his ideas fly fancifully through realms peopled by druids, bards, and priests, yet mixed with this wild fantasy are solid and important observations. That's an important point, right? That's a really important point. And maybe I could put this across maybe I could put this across in a way. He's acting to give us evidence, and he's adding a bit of narration on it, right? Anyone could do that. As long as you give the evidence, you can say that aliens produced it. But the main thing is you've got to be able to tell us the solid evidence and allow us to understand the solid evidence, and then, you know, whatever. Right. So he gave us solid evidence of pottery. And the other thing as well is this thing about detail is important because lots of these monuments are no longer with us. In fact, Rook corresponded regularly with the antiquarian Douglas, who wrote to the former in January 1787, and he wrote in 1787 the following. Again, this is not in the south, this is in the middle part of the country. I have a strong presentiment that Derbyshire, from its mountainous and in some respects uncultivated state, contains many extraordinary, fine, undescribed and unexplored remains of very ancient places of sepulchre. Remember, the word sepulchre is like a burial monument. So he's actually telling people in the south, look at what we've got. And people in the south are saying, sod you, we could do whatever we like. But in many ways, up north, they're actually giving us detail, which is very important. They're doing a lot more than people are doing in the south. You know, these people up in Derbyshire, they're a bit slow. They're digging one mound a month, and people in the south have already dug 100. But these people in the north seem to be into their publishing and writing things up really quick. So that's great. Our friend Rook's antiquarian susceptibilities were occasionally imposed upon. Once he dug into a cairn called Abbotslow, uncovering an urn cremation first found by the local landowner and reportedly covered by a flat stone. The stone was carved with an inscription which read in Latin GELLTRAE C33 LV Brit. Rook was persuaded that this indicated that the urn held a Roman interment. So in other words, a bit of subterfuge there, somebody tried to confuse him. And that the cremated bones were those of a remote relative of the Gells, one Gellius, owners of the land on which the cairn stood. Rook published the details of the dig in Archaeologia. So in other words, my French, I can say is people took the piss out of Rook. You know, they found real archaeology and they buried it and made Rook feel that, you know, and they faked some of the information. And Rook didn't question this. Is that a bad or a good thing? Well, it's not a bad thing because he's actually telling us what he found. And if there is some fake in this, then yes, somebody has faked the Roman detail. But the actual evidence of the urn cremation is sound. The general feeling was that the inscription had been planted, which we've already explained. There are other people that are working in Derbyshire that are like people in the south. Let's give an example. There's a certain person called White Watson of Bakewell, employed one Francis Walker to get urns. Now, these people sound very much like the people in the south. Obviously, there's bad eggs or people who ain't as good as Rook and ain't as good as Peg. And here we go. From some mounds in the Carn Cemetery on Stanton Moor. While these actually come from Stanton Moor, they're actually from Rook's excavations. But no written information on these has survived. So this is the difference. You get people, gentlemen diggers, just doing whatever they bloody liked, right? And then you've got people like Rook and Peg and then Bateman who are actually really offering and getting us to be interested in history and archaeology because they're actually showing us what's there by publishing it. We'll go on to our friend. The next workers in the field were William Bateman, 1787, 1835, a rich and leisured Derbyshire country gentleman, and Samuel Mitchell, 1803, 1865. Now, we all know about William Bateman. William Bateman was the father of this Bateman, okay? And this is the thing that you know, we've got these dynasties, and this probably may have sort of got Bateman into this. A Sheffield solicitor, Samuel Mitchell. They worked together, William Bateman. Mitchell, then a young man, made the acquaintance of Bateman in the early 1820s. Mitchell had a strong predilection for archaeology, and it is doubtless this common bond which brought the pair in contact. So in other words, there was a massive interest in history and archaeology. And the account of their joint investigations were later written up and published by Thomas Bateman, the son of William Bateman. William's son, but for some reason, Mitchell's part in the operation was ignored. Right, okay, let's just not sort of, you know, lots of people working in archaeology and history, their names just don't survive, or they disappear, or somebody else takes the glory. It is difficult to account for this, but it was one of Bateman's failings that he sometimes neglected to give credit to his co-workers. Well, I do it all the time, but it's not my fault. When I publish items from the local newspaper, they actually scrub the names of the people who have actually done the research for me. So I'm constantly saying a certain person took a photograph, and they don't put it in a newspaper, even though my original article clearly says that somebody actually helped me with it. So, you know, when we think about other people working outside within the archaeological landscape, it's not always the fault of the person who could have originally given the credit. So what we look at the landscape that William and Thomas Bateman were working on, and our friend the solicitor Mitchell, from these it would appear that he was a keen and enthusiastic researcher interested in excavation for its own sake, while William Bateman is known rather as a collector. The latter comment, however, might be a disservice to Bateman's own known archaeological enthusiasm. So in other words, you know, it's a bit harsh to say that they're one or the other. But anyway, from his writings, it seems that Mitchell's technique was to, here we go. Let's sort of get a bit more illustration on you. Here we go. Bit of an illustration, but we'll keep this in the background for now. From the writings, it seems that Mitchell's technique was to drive trenches to the center of the cairns he dug from some point on the circumference. The work was hasty. Now, this is not the work of Rook. This is the work of Mitchell and William Bateman. But according to the tenants then prevailing, on one day, several small cairns near the Carl Walk Hill Fort were attacked with negative results. On another occasion, a cairn in a Haddon field yielded 70 intrusive Roman copper coins. The finds persuaded Mitchell that the mound was constructed in the reign of Emperor Gratian. Interesting. He consequently favoured a Roman date for the prehistoric cairns he and Bateman opened. So in other words, they assumed because they found some Roman material that they were all Roman. It's said that William Bateman said, "I am decidedly of the opinion that they are all Roman." But obviously, basing coins to tell us all about the monuments is not good. So obviously, most of them were probably prehistoric in the first place, and then the coins ended up in them somehow. The works of Hall were evidently not known to Mitchell, hence the former's incense cups appeared to the latter to be earthen lamps. Cinerary urns were invariably sun-baked, and a bronze awl was a copper pin, which had previously served as fastening for the dress. So in other words, what we've got is that these people up north were not really communicating with people down the south, and the people down the south were not communicating with the people in the north. If they had people in the south that communicated with people in the north, they'd be able to work out what they were finding in different areas. But that's the way it was. You know, there's no internet back then, which is a bit of a shame. So what we've got is the work. For example, we go back to the likes of Gibb Hill, and if you remember, Gibb Hill is near Arborough, and it's said that in working at Gibb Hill in the 1820s, a cairn was reported to consist of loose stones and earth for 2 yards, a thin layer of stone, a yard and a half of further stones and earth, a second stone stratum, then 1.5 yards of stiff red-brown clay mixed with charcoal marks of fire. Interesting enough, we're getting that detail from the likes of Mitchell, who had further been written off as being just a digger of these things. Now he was writing detail. He was giving us information to maybe give us an illustration like this, but this is obviously an inhumation burial rather than a cremation. Mitchell goes on to say this clay was laid on the natural soil and was throughout its whole circumference full of burnt bones and charcoal, disposed apparently in layers. That's a nice bit of detail. We're getting that in the 1820s. So in other words, these people have come of age. They're telling us about layers, stratification, and this is not Rook or Peg. These are the other diggers. And it says a further stratum of stone was placed below this. It had been changed into a yellow ochre substance by the action of fire. So we're cause and effect. The fire is causing the change of the color of the earth. So we're getting detail. Below this was solid rock. Mitchell sought a specialist report on the red-brown clay, submitting it to Sir Francis Darwin and Dr. Booth. Now that's interesting. Why is that interesting? If I could shout out, why is that interesting? Now we're getting other people involved in the work of the antiquary. We're getting other experts involved. They're consulting with other people to tell them what the layers mean, what the changes in color mean. So in other words, what we've got is it's not just about antiquaries now, we're bringing in other experts. Here he followed in the path of Hall, who successfully sought identification of a large animal bone found in a barrow by showing it to his butcher. There we go. They're now starting to go out their box. Instead of assuming what they found is a certain thing, they're going outside their box and they're actually using other experts. To see these marks on these bones, what do these bone? And the butcher says, well, you know, it's an animal bone and the bone's been butchered. Oh, right, okay. So that assumption of the antiquarian world is now going. They're actually starting to understand that this is a lot more than just digging things up. William Bateman asked Cunnington's friend, the Reverend Thomas Lehman, to examine finds from the Henslow Carn, Derbyshire. He also sought a report from a certain Dr. Hibbert of Manchester on a skull from the same mound. This is great. This is suddenly great because what we're doing, we're getting other people in to sort of confirm or to corroborate or to disagree with what the antiquarians are doing. This is all good stuff. William Bateman's son, Thomas, was born in 1821 and died in 1861. He only lived 40 years, Thomas Bateman, as opposed to William Bateman, who lived 50, from what I can work out, 51 years. Bereft of his mother very early in life, he received a home education before attending the Reverend Fearon's Academy at Bootle. Back home, he was soon steeped in antiquarian lore. His father died in 1835 when Thomas was 14. So his son has been steeped in the history and archaeology and the passion given to him from his dad, William. But at the age of 14, Thomas loses his dad, William Bateman. He was then brought up by his grandfather, Thomas Bateman of Middleton Hall, High Sheriff of Derbyshire in 1823. On Thomas Senior's death, so here we go. Hang on, Thomas, his vast estates devolved on his grandson. So in other words, the father of William Bateman was exceedingly rich, and this ended up in the hands of Thomas Bateman. These riches he inherited enabled him to build up a huge library and museum, of which his own archaeological collection was only a part. So in other words, people, now we're talking about Bateman now being a figure in the archaeological establishment of the 1800s. He's using his wealth to actually fund archaeology. He's using his wealth to understand the archaeology. He's using wealth to allow people to see his archaeology, and he's publishing it. And it's a shame that after he came into this, he passed away 14 years later. Look what Bateman could have achieved with that richness. Bateman's main fame is based on the work on burial mounds, of which he or his lieutenants dug some 400 in Derbyshire. So obviously it was a bit like some of the diggers in the south, but he also had more resources at his disposal, and also digging in Staffordshire, East North Riding of Yorkshire. East Yorkshire and North Brighton of Yorkshire. He and his co-workers were among the most prolific excavators in the field of English prehistory, but they published their results. Although his work was somewhat hurried and lacking in care, it was better than that carried out by most other workers of that time, and the results were always carefully written up. That is the sign of somebody who actually cares. Bateman had a deep fondness for archaeological research, as he said in his first book, Vestiges of the Antiquaries at Derbyshire in 1848. He says, an early predilection for archaeological pursuit called him forth to many pleasurable excursions. Much pleasurable work, we would say. He remarked that his journeys in search of the antique had afforded the happiest portion of his career, and that his book was enlarged from his journal more by the pleasure of revisiting in fancy scenes of past enjoyment and by a wish to communicate any facts that might be made available for the diffusion of antiquarian science than by any motives of mercenary or ambitious character. The possession of a considerable fortune gave Bateman the necessary leisure to pursue his activities. At first, he directed the excavations in his native county and his neighbouring Staffordshire. But from the spring of 1845, Samuel Carrington, a village schoolmaster from Wheaton in that county, took over operations there. From 1849, James Ruddock, taxidermist, dug into certain Yorkshire tumuli, chiefly around Pickering and Whitby. So in other words, what we're talking about, we're talking about this guy Bateman really going out and sort of giving us using his wealth to get people out there and to do the work. There's a whole sort of whole group of people now working and being paid for by Bateman. Bateman's working parties usually numbered 3 or 4. So it wasn't just 1 or 2 people, it was 3 or 4. Among them, his brother-in-law, William Parker, was prominent. A sketch of him appears in a vinaigrette opposite to a publication, and it basically says distinguished barrow opener. A glimpse of Bateman's early operations appears in Isaac's Barrow Diggers. We mentioned that again, Isaac's Barrow Diggers. We mentioned that the other week, Barrow Night. The Reverend Stephen Isaac, who 1798-1849, didn't live greatly long either, met Bateman at the Canterbury Congress and afterwards visited him in Lombardale House. He accompanied Bateman on a number of digs. As a result, wrote his humorous literary curiosities, and the frontispiece illustrated an actual opening. So what we've got people. So if we go with this is a really nice illustration. It's a really nice little illustration, and this is actually the frontispiece, as we've said, for barrow diggings by a barrow knight. The excavation of Taylor Law in May 1845. Isaac's poem describing a typical barrow opening expedition in the spring of that year. Identifiable participants include Bateman with pick. That's Bateman. Bateman's the one with the pick. Isaacson with the trowel on the left there. Another Benjamin Thompson with the spade. Parker to Thompson's left, and Nut. And there's a greyhound called Nut. Next to Bateman is an interested spectator. So spectator digging into these things. So what we're going to do is we're just going to mention sort of a few little notes that archaeologists have had about their work. So we'll just try and see what these diggers are saying about their work. Sort of little sort of notes from Parker that we've mentioned. Carrington, Isaacson. This is again from his book, and obviously from Bateman. So a few little things that we've got here. So you would go. So this is one associated with Parker. Eyes upon the barrow bent are as if they'd pierce earth's very center. And it goes on to say, about another one from Parker. Nout would have better suited Parker in these pursuits as a very fakir. In fact, I very little doubt he'd beat the Easterners out and out. So we're talking about digging into these mounds. Another Carrington is noted in brief. And would our time or space afford, we'd tell of schoolmaster abroad, obviously digging into these things. Isaacson on his work there, you can think of Isaacson then, this might be Isaacson talking, but who's he armed with shining trowel, who all their labourers watches so well. If fond of work, he does not shrew it. Why, that's the barrow digger's poet. So in other words, we're talking about these people sort of having a sense of poetry, a sense of camaraderie of this sort of this expedition. And there's a little ditty about the dog there, Nut. There we go. There's Nut on the bottom right-hand corner. Besides old Nut of dogs, the colonel does not our special notice earn ill, for he delights at us to stare. So he's staring them, looking at the digging, as if instead of skull, 'twas hair we sought in antiquated low. So that's a little bit of a ditty about the dog. Some of this doesn't really run off the tongue, but it's they were very enthusiastic. They had this sort of their own graffiti of their mind about what they're doing whilst they're digging. And something about what we've got is like a little bit of a ditty, a little bit of a poem now about them digging into a mound like this, and this could be any of them. So here we go. And I think what we'll do, we'll go up to 9 o'clock and then we will break. So that'll be a Christ. We're doing this for an hour and a half. And some good advice is offered on methods of procedure when interments were in close proximity. So let's think about this. Think about digging into that mound, all those people chatting, Nut the dog. Here we go. Hither bring my trusty scraper, monk's barrow tools, there's none to match her. And tread not heavily, because it made serious effect deposit. For Britain's skull, so long in ground, is very seldom perfect found. And what we scarcely deem a less ill, you may destroy a potter's vessel, which formed of potter's clay, though thick, can scarce withstand the blow of pick. So suddenly, there's the trowel. And you know what, Andy? That's the trowel come of age. That's the tool. That's the chosen weapon of the archaeologist. And there it is, in the deemed pseudo photograph of the book of Isaac's son. Obviously, no photography back then. And you know what we've got. I want us to look at a sort of few images. You know, I think again, one of the other things that's very important on an archaeological dig, has it been missed in the writings of Isaacson? This is what Isaacson says. He says, the provision of adequate supplies of liquid and solid refreshment is mentioned more than once by Isaacson. Early in the first of his comments on the culinary preparations for the excavation party. Here we go. Andy, this is ideal on an archaeological excavation. So when you're ever out with Claire, remember this. So ham, veal, rabbits, lambs, at once we thrust, with varied condiments beneath a crust. We've got to be ready when we're on our excavations, folks. At midday, a truly gargantuan feast was swiftly demolished. Here we go. So whenever you go on an excavation with these guys, right, you've got to remember to have had no breakfast. Here we go. Pie of rabbit's tongue and chine. Was that thyme or chine? Chine, C-H-I-N-E. Leg of poultry cheek of swine. That's going to be very soft, isn't it? Pickled salmon, onion, mango. That actually sounds quite nice. Down the throat fast as they can go. Brandy and beer. Pete's right in there with Adam. Bring up the rear. And if anyone's ever on an archaeological excavation with me, if you're very lucky, you'll hear me shouting up, Margaret, you're on Bog Squad. And what does Bog Squad mean, Margaret? It means you've got to make the cup of tea and get the biscuits ready. Margaret, go on Bog Squad, which we will be doing in a couple of minutes. But what I'd like to do is I want us to look at a sketch by Hayman Rook. Now, we mentioned Rook again earlier on. He was the chap 1823, 1806, 1823, 1806. He's bloody time traveling now. 1723, 1806. This is our friend, the Rook himself. This is the man who really wanted to take his time on things. Am I just going to show you something here? You might take a bit of a jab at this, right? But it's not to be jabbed at. So if we come back to this again. Oh, is it the other way? Oh. No, it is the other way. Oh, God almighty. Where's the image? There it is. Nice. So this itself is sketches by Hayman Rook, showing Peak District cairns discovered by him on his archaeological rambles. The Resurrection Man dug into a number of barrows and drew plans of cemeteries and grave goods later published in Archaeologia. Now, you may think this is crude, but it's better than a slap on the face, because some of these things no longer exist anymore. So we can get an idea, a basic idea of the archaeology, of the landscape, of the sense of the world that the archaeology gives us, that these people are actually recording. And on that moment, Margaret, Bog Squad, and we're going to take a break. So we've got a bit more of Barrow stuff. Then what else did I promise after this? We'll be looking at a little bit of reconstruction stuff at Butzer. And then, didn't I ask you to think about this? Ritual reaction to previous behavior.
Ooh.
That's one image I haven't got. And I've got to get an image to illustrate that. I forgot I didn't put that in here. So I've got to get an image for that. And there's another two images. There's actually something that I haven't told you about. There's also records recorded on stone. Those are the two things to look out for after we've done our barrow diggers today. And I need to make sure. And also, oh yeah, we've got three things to do after this as well. So I need to remember I've got to do that. So I want to illustrate something. And let's just go. There we go. We've had no disturbances in that last bit, which is good. It was hell earlier on. My God, it was absolute hell.
Wasn't that bad?
Well, we found out what David was having for dinner. 500 people wandered in on Andy and said hello. By the way, Margaret, you're not jumping up and down, which is good.
I know. Isn't that? I wonder what it is. Perhaps it's an electrical thing.
Or maybe you had deep feelings for me, and it was so jittery you couldn't control them. Though
Manifested itself, yeah. It does look like interference.
Yeah, it could be the fridge or something, couldn't it?
I don't know.
It's
Yeah.
evidently a lot of people are having trouble with it on Zoom, particularly.
Yeah.
It's been in Google. There's a lot of conversation about
Right.
it.
But it's strange how it stops and starts, isn't
Yeah,
it?
it is. It is.
Well, the thing is, I'm strangely enough, I don't know how they managed to get £170 out of me every bloody year to do Zoom. Because I've got to, because we can go on forever. I think the average account's like 45 minutes or something. Right, okay. Andy, let's just see if you've got anything to tell us or any points you would like to raise with us, darling.
No, I love the image with the trowel. I think that's great. That's it's the first one I've seen.
And it's the earliest one you've seen,
Yeah.
you know. So 200 years, you know, we've been using trowels. You know, the one
It's
we're
not the bricklayer's trowel.
no, how dare you? It's a pointing trowel, 4
Oh,
inch.
yeah.
Yeah, well, that's what you should point at the brickwork.
Hang on a minute, Peter. They've started printing on them archaeological trowel.
You could,
It's a bricklayer's trowel. You point at the brickwork.
No, it's an
No.
archaeological trowel that could be used for pointing. Yes.
Thank you, Andy. Thank you. Andy comes straight. The problem is now bricklayers trowels are like really good hand forged ones are like 24, 25 quid now. They're really expensive, Pete.
Yeah. They're too pointy.
where would you buy an archaeological trowel from?
The
If you go
archaeological
onto
trowel
the
shop.
No, you can't. No, you can't go to Dewson's, right? You've got to go on the internet and type in archaeological trowel, and you can buy an archaeologist trowel, and it's got to be a 4 inch, not 5, 4 inch.
But in Bateman's time, they didn't have the internet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, shut up, you twat. Right. Okay, Margaret, talking about charts, anything you want to say?
Well, these Bateman people, they seem to have been very involved for quite a number of years, father and son, or was it grandfather, father and son? Were there three?
No, I think that William Thomas.
Yeah, what did they do as a day job, or was that their full-time?
They were drug dealers in London. That's why they didn't go down the south.
They were
And
not
made-
clergymen, all of them, were they?
No, they made a lot of money, hadn't they? Where did they get the money from? Does it say? Because
No,
they
it
said they
don't
were
say.
just rich.
They were just rich, a bit like Adam.
Slave trade. Yeah.
Yeah, they must have been landowners, mustn't they?
Yeah.
Had
Yeah,
a lot of
landowners.
serfs on the land that they collected money from.
Exactly.
What
Pete-
happened
Peter-
to all the, I presume they found quite a lot of artifacts. Where are they now? Are they in
Sheffield Museum.
Sheffield? Oh,
Yeah.
right, not in Derbyshire then.
Well, I'm sure there's a bit in bloody Derbyshire. Hang on a minute. Sheffield's got to have a little bit. Everyone always forgets about Sheffield.
I just wondered why Sheffield?
Well, stop going about Derby, Sheffield. You can have a row with someone in a minute. Anyway, Derby County's not as good as Sheffield United. Anyway, carry on. Pat.
I wondered where Samson's standing stone was.
Alongside, right, okay. Pat, no, don't do what I tried to do the other day. I'm driving along, looking down on the left, and I nearly crashed the bloody car. No,
Is that it? Is that the one here in Bridgend? That one?
Hey?
Off the M4. Is that where it is?
yeah, basically, it's as you're, you know when you're leaving Bridgend and you've got you start to see Paul Talbot in the distance, and then there's no trees, and then it's like a bit of a flyover, right? Down on the right there is actually where the standing stone is.
Right. Okay. And what about this T-Do Cellar standing stone? Where's that?
Oh no, that's it.
Oh, it's got two names.
Yeah, it's got two names. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
No, that's the same. No, it's got half a dozen names. TV and T Teller, and T Teller or whatever. Yeah, that's the one. Right. Okay then.
By pile, is it?
Yeah, you've got loads of them, Pete. I know it's by pile. Yeah.
I remember seeing some sort of big pylon, in the field. There's a huge pylon.
There was, and we hid behind it as the farmer went through the field with his tractor.
But there in that picture, there was no pylon. I couldn't see a pylon.
Yeah, there is a pylon there.
Yeah,
I-
there
I
is. Yeah,
There is.
and in the aerial one, you can see it. Yeah, very close
you
to
can-
it.
You
Oh,
can see it. Yeah. You can see it. Oh God, my head's gone. Right. Okay. Peter S.
No,
No, Peter C. What it is, Peter C gets a bit confused. Every time I say Peter, Peter S jumps in. David, anything you want to say? Oh God, David, you're muted. Unmute. Oh God, hang on. Oh, can I unmute the poor bugger? Hang on.
get
Ask to
good.
unmute. I've asked him to
Can't
unmute
use
anyway.
his arm.
Oh, David. Right, Adam, anything you want to Adam, anything you want to say?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting picture you painted with the dividing the kind of process they're doing up north versus down south. Up north sounding much more careful, and they've got a lot more care in what they're doing, but drawing on interdisciplinary sort of things as well, and that. But going back to what you're saying about kind of people, sort of being a bit cynical about history or being disconnected from it, do you think it's because it was the southern sort of less careful, more sort of self-interested motivations? Is that the kind of attitude which dominated in archaeology in the end, which you feel like people have been a bit alienated from their history? Or
I think this is a really interesting point. I think what I probably need is to hone in on my answer with this one, because I know exactly what you're getting at. I think there still is a little bit of hierarchy in archaeology, and it's very much down south. All the money seems it's still now Mike Parker Pearson. It's all about Stonehenge. It's all about Avebury. It's all about spending the money to move the Mithras temple. It's all about, we'll have the Rhodes Theatre and all this stuff. It all seems to be focused on the south because that's where that's where the money is in archaeology. And in many ways, when I was introduced to Arbelo just before Christmas, I had no idea it existed, even though, I've traveled quite a lot of these places. And and then you open our eyes to Shap, the monuments at Shap in Cumbria, and Marlborough Henge up in Cumbria, the Maybury Henge in Cumbria, and you start to think about all these other sites. It's only because you dig a little bit deeper that you actually find them, and there is a little bit of, our history is a little bit better than yours, and it really stinks. And actually on a lesser level in Wales, in fact, when you look at the Northern Wales argument, all the money has been thrown in South Wales at places like Caerphilly Castle, Raglan Castle, looking at those big parcels. And when you think, well, you've got Carnarvon up north, but then you're struggling to find places up north that have had a lot of money thrown at them, like the castles in the south, and there is this divide across the board. But in Scotland, it's Orkney versus the south. So yeah. Anyway, if that answers your question, Adam. Anyway, Anne, anything you'd like to say, lovely?
Yeah, did I get it right that Bateman established the language of archaeology, the language that's used?
No, Bateman introduced some of the language, like Rook had ideas. These people are contributing their bits to archaeology, but it's almost still that, it does feel that the textbook of archaeology comes from the south, but actually lots of the pioneering stuff is actually being done up the north.
Yeah. Did the language of archaeology ever get, because we're looking at a long time ago, developed into something like where you'd have a dictionary or a glossary, or where people could refer to? Did that ever develop from that or not?
Yeah, there is that. Years and years ago, I bought this booklet. It was like a book, not a booklet, a book, and it was like antiquarian dictionary of archaeology, and I don't know when it was printed, but I had a copy of it. So, but these sort of dictionaries are coming later. But there is one thing that I will say, right? We're seeing the word archaeology used more when we're referring to the north. If you go back to my earlier lectures about people talking in the south, the word antiquarian is used more. Up north, the word archaeology seems to be coming in.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know if you've seen that, but I've seen that. Up north, the word archaeology is used more in the text, and in the south, antiquarian is used more. So I think the adoption of the word archaeology, we're seeing these people as archaeologists rather than antiquarians in the south, and that's an interesting point. I've seen that myself as I've been going through it. So if that answers your question, yeah, the archaeology is developing. And Andy, quickly before I have my cup of tea, and I got to find 2 sets of illustrations.
Yeah, Anne's just very kindly reminded me that there was one little mention he said about I think it was Bateman was using differently, was referring to layers.
Yes,
that's got to be one of the earliest stratigraphy quotations, surely, because it's that way of judging and dating stuff didn't come until about 100 years later, didn't it?
I think
generally.
I think actually, if I can give a if I can refer to, I think we're talking about Hoare and Cunnington. They were very close on coming up with this sort of historical thing about, you know, the differences in periods. But this is very different. This is actually the differences in layers. And yes, there is a language developing that is being developed up north, and I think there's this idea again that we're differentiating between the textures of archaeology with earth being the predominant material in the south, but up north is you've got earth and stone, and you have got a textural difference, and this is coming through in Bateman's work.
Good. I thought not heard of that before.
So we're going to do that. So what we are going to do is we're going to have a cup of tea. It's 9:14. You know, I keep saying to the ones on Wednesday, I keep saying, yeah, last night we were still doing this at 10 past 10, and they're going, bloody hell, we're not.
No staying power, those Welsh people.
Yeah, they are mainly Welsh actually. You know, Adam Adam's done the Wednesday one a couple of times, and Adam's Welsh. You could tell from his accent.
Well, his
right.
surname's Welsh, isn't it?
Who?
Adam's surname is Welsh, isn't it? Griffiths, isn't that a Welsh name?
Yeah.
Well, his middle name's Schaffenacker. That's definitely
infiltrated our Cumbrian group.
He has. He's definitely. The weird thing is, he's actually not got away with it because it's obvious that it's not a bloody Cumbrian name. You know, can you remember Gilbert? It was like Gilbert Scurra. It's hardly a bloody Welsh name, is it?
I wonder what Scurra was from.
Oh, it's a bit bloody late. We can't ask him now, can we?
I think it comes from the northeast. I was asking Tommy, and I can't remember what he said now.
Oh, wasn't he from Yorkshire originally?
Yeah, I think so. Somewhere over that way. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, I've just seen. Do you know what the biggest monolith in Britain is?
Go on.
Tallest, heaviest, most ginormous one is near Scarborough. Rudstone monolith near Scarborough.
Yeah.
8 meters high.
Wow.
And weighs 26 tons. Over 3,000 years old, and they built a church around it.
You know what we are going to do, right? You really wind me up, Margaret. You know I've got to get a bloody image of that before the end. Yeah. Right. So how do you spell that? Rudstone.
Rudstone.
Actually, can I just make a comment, right? I think that it was originally Rudestone. Rude. Rude means common or basic.
Really?
Are you just saying that's because it's in Yorkshire?
The devil's arrows, you know, that shape of the devil.
Yeah. The
Like-
devil's arrows. Yeah.
Looks like one of those.
Oh, that's interesting.
They didn't have bloody the red arrows back then. Right, okay.
Did I say a red arrow or I mean a devil's arrow?
Right.
Yeah, they became the red arrows later. Yeah.
Oh. Right,
There is a
okay.
set
then,
of
so-
stones called the arrows, isn't there?
guys, shut up. I gotta have
Yeah.
a break. I tell you what, you guys can keep talking. I'm just gonna go out my
Yeah,
break.
we went to see them up around York.
Yeah,
Yeah.
bless you, we did.
Yeah,
I've got a picture of them. I'm sure I have.
yeah. Those three. That's the ones Margaret's meaning. They're called the devil's arrows or whatever.
Devil's arrows.
That's
Yeah,
it,
yeah.
devil's arrows.
This is the same shape. They dragged it from 10 miles from where it was
Wow.
a glacial deposit, and they dragged it 10 miles to this place.
Mm.
Well, it's not a million miles from York, is it? That's,
No.
maybe there's more.
Well, I think they might have been spotted if they're so big.
But people tend to look at those as individual items, like Carl was saying earlier, and not see the bigger landscape. You know,
That's
the
right.
fact that it's a similar style means that it's possibly contemporary, although it's a lot bigger. But
Yeah, well, there's a lot of barrows and other things in that area.
there are.
Yeah. But 26 tons, just imagine dragging that for 10 miles.
That's maybe where they gave up and plonked it where it was. That's it. I'm not going any further. Right here, that'll do. Nobody will notice.
Yeah, and then they built the church around it.
They hide it there. That's it. They must have done then. They'll have left it then. Quick, build a church around it, and then nobody will know.
You'll notice.
Yeah.
What does that mean? They built the church round it. Is it inside the church now?
Well, it says the church was built in 1100 AD, All Saints Church, and this stands in the graveyard.
Ah,
All right.
Been there for 3,000 years.
Oh, so they made it hallowed ground around it.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah. Wow, that sounds really interesting. I didn't know about that one at all.
No.
Might just have a look at that. See if I can find a picture.
Rude, so you think it would be rude stone monolith. 8 meters high, blimey. That's massive.
Yeah, it is.
What does Carl mean when he says an undressed stone? What does
It's not been cut to shape.
Oh, I see.
Oh, it's big.
Yeah, it is, isn't it? It's the biggest.
That'll be why it looks big.
It's the biggest of them all.
Oh, go away. I hate it when you try and open a site up and it comes up and then all it comes up and then all the cookies and all this but plastered over the top of it and you can't see it.
Yeah, it's annoying, isn't it?
Let's try historic England and see what happens there.
Mm.
It's got a funny thing on the top of it.
It's got they put a metal cap on a lead cap in the
Right.
18th century to help preserve it.
Okay. It's gosh,
I know.
that is quite impressive, isn't it?
Yeah.
It is big and it is very carved as well.
Mm,
It's not just a big lump of stone they've done. It's shaped.
yeah.
I have to try and get to have a look at that next time I'm up that way.
Do you go over to Yorkshire very often?
Well, we go over to North Lincolnshire and we nip into over into Hull and to Beverley and things. And Scarborough was a place we always used to often go up for a day out or something.
Yeah.
But I like Scarborough.
Yes. I don't think I've ever been to Scarborough. I've been to Whitby.
Yeah. Oh, that's very nearby.
Yeah. But there's a lot of things in Yorkshire. We've not really done Yorkshire, have we?
No.
You know, apart from Star Car, and but there's lots of stuff there, and it's a big county.
It is. It is. What a strange place. Where did you go? If your son can't fix your computer, I'll certainly come and have a try if you want.
It's fine now. It's you should have no trouble for an hour.
Yeah, mine did it a few weeks ago, just for a short while. I think I had too many windows open and it was a bandwidth issue, but I've got that new fiber optic in, so maybe that'll help if she gets that in.
You would think that, well, my daughter was saying, you would think that because there had been a lot of trouble with it, that the Zoom itself would sort out whatever's going wrong.
Well, it might not be
lots
Zoom.
of complaints.
Yeah, it might be just Zoom working with something else. You see, this is the problem these days. Everybody denies it's anything to do with them, but it's, like I said, I don't see it on anything other than Zoom. So. But mine just stopped. But it might be something to do with the lines.
Well, Rachel seemed to mess about with it. She knows a lot, you know, about computers. And she seemed to fiddle about for quite a long time. I didn't know what helped me. I couldn't begin, you know, but as I say, so it didn't seem easy for her to sort out whatever it was at the time. And certainly I didn't have any chance.
No, it's not easy.
I find when it's going, I've got myself a little piece of folded paper which I've been sticking over so I can't see it, because the flashing really irritates me a bit, and it's not very good for you. You know, but it's gone off. So it's fine. It's fine when it's like this. It's lovely, but I've been sort of putting that over
right.
So it didn't affect my eyes.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's a good job it stopped.
Right, my complete gay gang. We got to crack on. I've got a load of images, and even got Rudston, and I just haven't done any research on it. I just looked at the image and I just thought, oh my God, look at the size of that.
It is. It's amazing, isn't it? I had a quick look as well.
Andy, I've got to ask you, Andy, right? Have you ever seen that before?
No, didn't know it was there. Been up to Scarborough as well.
It's quite
a few
shocking,
times.
the stuff that we don't know.
Yeah. I'd never heard of it, and I didn't know it was there. And the pictures I've been looking at it, it's actually very, very beautifully shaped as well. It's not just a random big stone that happens to be in the right shape. It's like cut. So I don't know whether that makes it slightly later or whatever. I don't know, but it's big.
The thing is, Andy, yeah, you're right. It could have actually been altered later on, but it could have been painted or anything. But the fact of the matter is, I've never heard of this. Never.
No.
So what we are going to do, I'm very, very wary of time, but it's just so much I wanted to get through today. So I'm going to really try and do that. So I just want to get straight to the images. My images might be all over the place at the minute but we'll just have to re-cue back to where we were. So I got my beautiful cup of tea with some goat's milk in front of me. Do you know what, Andy? Cow's milk is really making me feel really ill these days. So I've got to try and make sure that I get my my goat's milk. I thought I'd let you know, Andy. Andy likes to know these things.
He's
Right,
not
so
interested, he's gone.
what's that?
He's not interested, he's gone.
The bastard. Right, okay. Joe, you know, I got every time in the world to listen to him, and when I'm telling him about my stomach problems and me drinking goat's milk, he can't be asked. That's terrible. Right, okay. They again, remember a reminder of Bateman, and also again just thinking about illustrations. I know that this is actually one of Rook's illustrations, but this itself was printed in Archaeologia in 1784. This is from Stanton Moor, Derbyshire. Again, 1784. Look at that detail. That is far better detail, Adam, than most of the stuff that we see from down the south. 2 fingers up in the air. And it's just one of the things that Margaret's just demonstrated was exactly what Adam mentioned. With getting political and not getting political, there is so much up north that we don't know bug all about, and that is another example that we've just been given by Margaret. And in many ways, this lecture of the Neolithic, these lectures that we're doing on the Neolithic, are being led by you guys. And the problem is, because it's being led by you guys, we're not going to be off the Neolithic until 2025. But that's great. We're all learning stuff, which is absolutely brilliant. The next illustration that we're going to look at, right, is also from another individual, which is actually that illustration there. From there, though not a barrow opener himself, White Watson lived from 1760 to 1835, collected artifacts from local excavations, which he sometimes funded. This page from his notebook records finds from sites on Stanton Moor. Can I just chuck something in there? And this is in 1799. Can I just chuck something in there that keeps coming up? We've got so many of these notebooks, so many of these artifacts that nobody ever bloody looks at, right? Very little attention's given to it, right? And this is stuff that still needs to be researched today. 224 years later, right? You know, when we're mentioning it, it's in the notebook. Well, what else do we know about the notebook? Please tell me, right? Somebody said to me this morning, they mentioned about a site which was being excavated in Wales, and they said, oh, there's a community excavation. And I'm just thinking, the first immediate thing I said to the person, which I'm sorry for, I said, oh, well, why are they excavating for? And they said, oh, well, isn't this positive news? And I said, no, it's not, because it's more excavation stuff when we haven't actually looked at this stuff properly. You know, this is the point. You know, in other words, what we do, we lecture these, we say about these people and say, oh, this ain't that much good, is it? Right? We're not even looking at this stuff, you know? What's the point in, you know, it makes me so bloody angry, you know? Again, crayon sketch of Thomas Bateman, made in 1845, a wealthy country gentleman. Bateman is famous both as a collector and explorer of some 200 cairns in the Derbyshire and Staffordshire Peak, and obviously we've got the other work by his dad, William Bateman, as well. He just looks like a really healthy, really nice looking gentleman. Actually, it's a shame that he was only around for 40 years. Bloody hell, 40 years. So, and when we think, Isaacson recounts the visits of the curious to view the barrow openings. Let's just go. Let's get to that. Oh, the barrow openings. There's a curious person. There he is. Whilst round, and it goes. This is Isaacson recounts the visits of the curious. Whilst round the Aborigines crowd, just as if, though industrious fleas had taken a holiday. So what he's saying, these Aborigines seem rather harsh. It was probably justified However, when we're talking about these Aborigines, these locals coming in and having their sort of Peneth having their say, this sort of Isaacson and sort of Bateman being very sort of upset that these people are actually coming along. It said at one barrow opening at a place called Fight described the uncouth behaviour of the inhabitants of Althastone, Staffordshire, during the opening of the huge, steep, low cairn, echoing Fawcett's remarks. Remember Fawcett before? This guy Fawcett used to dig things early in the morning so he didn't get these bloody Mogadons coming along commenting. Right, echoing Fawcett's remarks on the annoyances caused by troublesome speculators. The work at Steeplow was rendered impracticable by the ill-mannered conduct of the natives who throng the low. Do you know, I'm going to say it, and maybe I shouldn't. I bloody hate members of the public coming along to excavations and saying the following: "Oh, what have you found?" It really gets on my, and I tell you what, another question is that really gets on my neck when you tell people you're an archaeologist: "Oh, what's the greatest thing you've ever found?" It really pisses me off. And this is something that has been rendered a bugbear to archaeologists all the way through the years up to the modern day and age. I remember watching Detectorists this one day, right? The wonderful series Detectorists. And it was Lance. If you watch Detectorists, there's Lance. Lance was asked in the field, what have you found? And it's like, and everyone going along, so what have you found? Oh. The Derbyshire Chronicle went so far as to label them the most barbarous specimens of humanity between this and New Zealand. So the Derbyshire Chronicle is writing of these people witnessing the excavations as the most barbarous specimens of humanity between this and New Zealand. So in other words, the public are barbarians, they're aboriginals. Apparently, hearing of Bateman's intention to dig at the cairns, the natives had preceded him in a vain search for imaginary treasure. So in other words, they started digging there before Bateman. This is, look at that there. We're loving it there. There's one of Bateman's tags. In a vain search for imaginary treasure, they had dug out an intrusive Anglian burial with iron weapons and 3 bronze Roman coins. So in other words, an archaeologist like Bateman, let's call him an archaeologist. Bateman's going out digging. He's going to start digging, and somebody's already started digging things. And also you've got this point earlier on Avenue where we've got the nice old rook, the antiquarian. They're trying to hoodwink him into the origins of what's there. We don't need this crap. And actually, from somebody who's been in archaeology for a very long time, you do get people who try to show you things or just to sort of wind you up or try to hoodwink you. It does happen quite a lot. One of these, here we go. These people who had been into the field digging before Bateman, one of these was sandpapered into illegibility in a vain attempt to transmute the brass into gold. So the Bateman finds a gold coin. No, he's not going to do that. Bateman makes no mention of the behaviour of the spectators at Steeplow. It's mentioned in the Derbyshire Chronicle anyway. But Isaacson wrote that they eventually forced the abandonment of the enterprise. So in other words, members of the public causing problems to the archaeologists. And in fact, there was one episode about a place in West Wales, this guy, I think some of you have watched it it's on YouTube still. Basically, this guy had called in Time Team to say, look, I found an iron sword and I found this and that, right? And there was like curios on the land, and they made out that these buildings on the land were actually genuine archaeology, right? Anyway, Time Team, through its investigation, found that it's all been faked. And the reason why it had been faked is that as they were digging an iron sword, from the Iron Age. Actually, somebody had bought all these artifacts and spiked the site. There was barbed wire underneath the iron sword. At that point, they knew the site had been faked. This was in Time Team. Anyway, so this is history. You know, these things to try and hoodwink archaeologists have been going on for over 200 years. They openly abstracted bones and other relics from the cutting and crowded so close to the trench edges that more than one of them fell in. The work was finally postponed till the march of civilization shall have penetrated these benign regions. So in other words, I don't think that's fair that we're saying that Northerners are a bit thicky, when in fact we've got our Fawcett saying that Southerners are a bit thicky as well. So that's a 1-1 draw there. In the closing, Isaac relates how the Khan was restored to its former symmetry, although occasionally Bateman fell below his professed standards in this respect. The Khan at the bank of our below still shows the ravages of the opening of 1845. Bateman's final act before the infilling, following Hall's example, was to deposit a lead tablet in the grave, which is this, to basically say that you've been there. And it said, some 9 of these tablets have so far been recovered from Bateman's barrows. All remarkably enough are stamped T. Bateman, a spelling error apparently not noted at the time. So Bateman is his surname spelled with an A at the end, not an E. And here we go. This is said about Bateman and leaving his tablets. There's a bit of history with laying the tablets in there as well. And least some future Barrow Knights. Barrow Knights, you see that? We've got the publication Barrow Knight. And least some future Barrow Knight, a cutting here should make in, and search in vain from morn till night for what we've just now taken. A leaden tablet we enclose, in pity such late man, where one and all may read who chose, inscribe the name T. Bateman. So in other words, a legend is made of the archaeology. The archaeology is made a narrative. In other words, it's like an early Indiana Jones film. It's like a narrative of the tomb opening, you know. So this whole sort of genre of archaeology, we'll just do a little bit more. The one thing that we do see is that it's said that one of the works that Bateman's writing, Bateman's writing material, and some of it is never really properly published, or is published privately, and it doesn't really circulate enough. And as a result, the work was never really properly publicized, and Bateman seems to have sat on much of the stock. So in other words, Bateman doesn't publish all his work in his lifetime, which is a bit of a shame. And this is what I'm panicking with my own work. I've got a complete medieval village that I've excavated, and only I have the information for it, and nobody's ever worked there, and I've got to publish that. It's my responsibility. Bateman did a lot of work, and he didn't publish it all. It was written, but he didn't publish it. The important thing is not just to write it up, but to publish it. In future years, acquaintances who were presented with copies of his work, praising its spirited and tasteful freshness and vigor. It was also lauded as an amusing, quaint, and witty work. Some of his work that he did with poetry, originality, spirited poems were to be seen important to the archaeologist. Bateman remains the only archaeologist to have had his activities recorded in a book of narrative verse. In fact, in 1870, the writer Elizabeth Meteyard published a story for children, Dora and her Papa, in which the main characters, Walter Flaxdale, was again based on Bateman himself. And do you know what? I'm going to be the second. Yes. Do you know what? I've got this report about the medieval village. And I've got all these little narrations of people who turn up on site, right? I'm going to be the second to do it. Good. Sorry, I've got to write this down. That's inspired me. It's going to be a narrative of the excavation. Brilliant. I'll be the second. Besides, obviously going back to our Bateman again, there you go. Bateman wrote quite in his lifetime other publications. Here we go. Bateman wrote 10 years digging in Celtic and Saxon grave hills in the counties of Derbyshire, Stafford and York. This is dated 1861, the year of his death. He also published a descriptive catalogue of his collection in 1855, good, and was preparing a further one at his death. The actual accounts of his excavations were written up shortly after they took place in fine handwriting in manuscript notebooks. And I tell you what, as an archaeologist, this is something I've learned because I used to write up a sheet of information after every single piece of excavation I actually undertook. So I can go back to all that and I can write it all up, except one excavation I was involved in. We had a car accident and there's my blood all over the pages of this book. And even basically bits of the skin from my head and all the rest of it. So I've got to go through that. But I've kept those notebooks and it's all part of the narrative of archaeology. And I'm not making that up. These form the basis of his printed works. So basically printing. Basically the work about his diggings carried out by his father himself. So this is he's publishing work about his father as well. Bateman was a careful was careful in recording the accounts of his work clear and precise. Dates of digs are always supplied, and these show that few of the cairn openings lasted longer than a day. Okay, Bateman was a bit more sort of quicker than sort of our likes of Peg and Rock. Sometimes more than one mound was attacked during the same day. But okay, we know that there are other things going on. Despite his claims to explore with the utmost care and preciseness, now we're seeing that there was some problems with his work. The scrupulous care so necessary on these occasions, it appears that Heinlow Bateman echoed the faults of his predecessor Hall by employing labourers without supervision. He noted that the labourers, being left to themselves, were not sufficiently careful in their researches. However, at the end of this strenuous operation, he had the hindsight to comment that nothing decisive could be ascertained except a conviction of the impolicy of attempting to explore so many barrows in a day. He started to see mistakes, you know, he needed to be there, which is great. Generally, however, Bateman was more careful than this, than some occasions. One, Bateman's prepared to say he made mistakes, which is the sign of a good archaeologist again. Bateman did actually, one of the things with Bateman, he did actually produce his work. He published it. He told us where things were, layers, which we've already said, illustrations of pottery, and so on. But he would also go into some narratives that, you know, this stuff is Roman when in fact it's prehistoric, or this is Anglo-Saxon when it's from other periods. But if you then you could undo that by saying, actually, we've got the records, we can now say what we think we say. It's one of his publications, Diggings, contains rather more illustrations than its predecessor, including section ground plans of certain counts. So he's doing sections of sites, he's doing ground plans of sites, which is really important. He's doing plans of all his archaeology. These were executed engravings with the work of Llewellyn Jewett. So he actually had a draftsman on board, a friend of Bateman, who nevertheless received no credit for them in the preface. Smith wrote in retrospectives, it is to be regretted that Mr. Bateman did not more fully avail himself of the former duet's artistic ability. I suspect that the volume is in other respects indebted to the gentleman. So what we're trying to say, if we look at this is an illustration I'm going to show you now, and that's quite a nice illustration. You'll be surprised. This is an imaginative reconstruction of the burial rites at a Beaker round barrow drawn by William Bowman for Bateman. This is William Bowman for Bateman. This actually looks quite new. This is surprisingly published in 1848. This looks like something that could have been created today. And I think that that's quite advanced for its day as well, because what we're actually showing there, the clothing is actually pretty good. You know, that is, again, this is Bateman's skill and his predecessor's skill to actually indicate that this is in a way the way we should be going. So, you know, you could be saying I think it was Margaret or whoever, that that, you know, what are we really developing as archaeologists into this day and age, in the way we're executing the archaeology and in how we're showing the archaeology? And yes, we are. So in Sheffield Museum, you've got pottery, flints, jet ornaments, other artifacts are superbly displayed and also created, in other words, watercolors. The manuscripts of Bateman's printed work, particularly diggings, and are likewise profusely illustrated with Indian ink drawings of the grave goods and numerous plans of graves and cairns. This is when archaeologists coming of age, Bateman. Another large sketchbook named Illustrations of Antiquaries contained blue monochrome watercolor sketches of cairns, graves and sites, mainly the work of Bateman, but with contributions from Carrington. The illustrative work and notes in Bateman's manuscript collection and his correspondence also present a wealth of valuable material on Bateman and his archaeological undertakings. As far as methods are concerned, Bateman's were those of his times. His usual technique was to drive sections from one point on the cairn. So obviously go back to this one again. As far as methods were concerned, Bateman's were those of his times. His usual technique was to drive sections from one point on the cairn edge to a centre, or section the mound by dividing it into quarters. Still techniques used today. I think that answers another question. Some ground plans of Carrington's digs in Staffordshire show some rather eccentric cuttings meandering in all directions across certain mounds, following the archaeology, which is something that archaeologists can be accused of. It's called wall following. Basically, you find a wall, you follow it. Okay, you think the archaeology is going to be over there, you follow it rather than a straight trench like Bateman. And it said, here we go, the central shaft method was apparently considered discredited by Bateman, since in his very first dig at Below, he regrets that trees growing on the sides of the mound made it impossible to excavate in a proper manner, and the only tenant method of digging was by sinking a shaft down the centre. Well, he's trying to find evidence. Although his work on a particular mound usually lasted only a day or part of a day, occasionally returned like Carrington to mounds that he felt would repay further excavations. So in other words, sometimes Bateman might be excavating a mound in a day, but he would go back and do more work, which is missing in the text. Bateman rarely supplies details of time expended in actual digging, but at Mootlow, 30-foot cutting entailed 6 hours heavy labor. His descriptions of cairn structures were occasionally lengthy and precise, though usually only where the construction differed from the usual curbed stone heap. So if there's similarities in the archaeology, he's not going to go into too much detail. That's a large mound on Ilam Moor, was composed of alternate layers of earth and loose stone. These strata were clearly defined, there being no admixture of stone with the earthy layers or of earth with stony ones. So in other words, it had been undisturbed. An earth mound at Gorsey Close had its soil interspersed with alternate layers of moss and grass. The number of these alternations were 12. These are massive details that we can be really interested with. I'm not going to do much more about Bateman today because I've got to do the other three things that I wanted to do. But finally today, we'll do barrow diggers in another 2 weeks, 3 weeks actually, because next week we'll be doing them with Neolithic the week after that. I'll see next week. Bateman's descriptions of burials and their settings were usually well and clearly written. He dealt carefully with inhumations, usually preserving the skulls and long bones. Perfect skeletons were removed and rearticulated. Diggins includes a descriptive list of crania exhumed by himself and his confederates. And if you look at any archaeological publication, there's a digest of comparisons of artifacts in that publication today. And this is exactly what Bateman was doing in the 1840s. I believe if Bateman would have survived another 20 years, most of what we call the father of archaeology would be Bateman. And that is, dubbed the pioneer in his Isaacson's poem, Bateman's barrow digging friend and later brother-in-law William Parker is here depicted as a distinguished barrow opener. And this is, again, William Parker, a distinguished barrow opener. And that's what the barrow diggers used back in the day in Bateman's time. So we're going to finish with, we're going to be doing more about Bateman in the future because I think it's important that we do more about Bateman. And, it's really, really good stuff, this. I'm going to just quickly, we'll look at questions. We're going to do butts in a minute. Again, this is how an archaeologist would have looked. Again, you've got everyone in this, haven't you? You've got Isaacson with the trowel, the guy who's writing lots of this stuff, and and Nut the dog. You can't forget Nut the dog, and Bateman with the pick. There you go. Bateman obviously knew what he was doing with a pick, as I described the other week. An archaeologist with a pick can do wonders. One of the lead plaques by Bateman. Again, this beautiful illustration. We didn't mention what this is showing. We're basically illustrating that we've got somebody passed away there. We've got them building up a stone cairn around him, a group of people. We're loving it. This could have been drawn last week, to be honest with you. It's lovely, 1845. And just basically Thomas Bateman and lots of other the illustrations that we're talking about from Bateman's Confederates of obviously our grave goods from White Watson. And I know we've done these, but I'm just gonna, and there we go, and the grave goods, and not forgetting our friend Peg, which we didn't talk much about. So what we're going to do is quickly now go back to where we were. The other thing today was just basically this sort of little bit of reconstructing archaeology, reconstructing a Neolithic building. Wow. And then I'm going to go with it looks okay, right? And the idea of putting thatch all the way down to the ground. That's sound. I'm going to go with that. Not sure about the entrance. I'm not happy with the entrance. Really not, because it's too big. It's too open. It's going to let a lot of heat out. These people understood about heat. It's too high for me. Maybe they've done that for the tourist dollar. I don't know. This is entrance too high. I'm sorry, it's too high. I hate this when we reconstruct things. The entrance is always wrong. But I'm liking the way they've done the roof down to the ground. So here we go. Butzer and Veal, Neolithic house reconstruction. The Butzer team have unveiled the fully completed reconstruction of an ancient Neolithic building, the Horton House, which the team have been hard at work on over the past year. Pandemic. The new building is a reconstruction of the remains of one of the most important Neolithic Stone Age houses to be unearthed in the UK, which was found at Horton in Berkshire in 2012. And that is a site that we will no doubt be visiting. So it'll be the Horton Neolithic building, which we'll be visiting in the future. We'll definitely be visiting that. So that's one of the things I want us to look at, a little bit of reconstruction, right or wrong. And basically, it's too Hollywood for me. But one thing they have got right is that they've put the facts down to the ground. And that, to me, I'm sorry, that's not going to work. It's just not. I built a roof now, which has got an earth sod roof on it, right? And the wind didn't rip it off. But you get a storm, that's going to be gone. The whole structure is going to collapse in the middle. But okay, we've got a reconstruction there. Again, we're looking at reconstructed stuff from this sort of period. And the next thing I want us to go to is obviously past the Peak stuff that we've done, that area of the Peak District, Derbyshire and whatever. Now, the other point I wanted to make, and I know we're using up sort of valuable time here, using valuable air. I mentioned at the beginning, I mentioned earlier on, is what do I mean by ritual reaction to previous behaviour? This is Llanrwst. This is Llanrwst, which is in West Wales, Llanrwst. This is not actually an ancient standing stone circle. This is a stone circle that's only been there for about 100 plus years. We reconstruct stone circles across Wales on a regular basis. Now, that stone in the middle, that stone in the middle used to, you see this in a Hollywood thing. It's like sort of a ritual reaction to previous behavior. Now, are we saying that we're using this sort of revival of the Gorthsed and the Eisteddfod to echo previous periods by reconstructing a stone circle like this so that we can sort of echo previous behavior into the modern age with a sense of ceremony? Maybe they've got that completely wrong. Maybe what was meant by ritual reaction to previous behavior is that maybe we're sticking stones up to represent trees, a ritual reaction to previous behavior. Basically, what we might be doing, another way of looking at this, we might be just chucking stones. We might be putting a stone there. When I heard the discussion earlier on, Andy said something like, "Oh, they moved it a certain distance. They couldn't be bothered to move it any further, so they stuck it there." Ritual reaction to previous behavior. You're just doing something and you don't know why you're doing it. You pick your nose. You don't know why you're doing it. Somebody's talking and you keep sort of going, oh, and you don't know why you're doing it, right? Again, ritual reaction to previous behavior. So anyone's got anything else to say about that when we do questions, please do. Next, one thing I wanted to mention, and this is for the future. We all recognize the record. We all recognize the vinyl record, and we all recognize these. Now, if you've got a stylus, you can sort of play an Elvis Presley hit, or a Holly hit, or you can play Duran Duran, or you can do any of this, right, using a stylus, and it creates music, right? Somebody sings, it's recorded on a record, it's exactly the way it sings, it's on the record, right? The dangerous talk is if you used a stick or a reed or something, and you went around in a circle, that would create a resonance. And it would create a resonance. The surface was different when this was created. Is this the same as a record? Could this tell a story? that is a rather interesting point, which I know we've looked at before, and I know we'll look at it again. But you see that in the middle, you take the reed into the middle, and then you go to the first set circle, you go back out again, another circle. Think about it. A person in the past would have thought this was nuts. We think that what I've said about this is nuts, but food for thought. Interesting. And then finally, again, this is Margaret's fault now. But Margaret, I really thank you for bringing this to us today. And Margaret, can you tell us a bit about this? Have you got the information in front of you, please, darling?
Let me just have a look.
We want this in
Oh, the
context.
Gladstone monolith.
Where is it?
This is near Scarborough.
Ah, yeah.
Near Scarborough. It was quarried about 10 miles away and brought to this place. It's 8 meters high. They built a church in 1100 AD.
Yeah.
This monolith had already been there for 3,000 years, they reckon. And they've put a lead cap on the top in the 18th century to help to preserve it.
Yeah. And how heavy did you say it was again?
I think it was 26 stone, was it?
26 stone.
26 ton.
26 ton, I mean, yeah.
26 stone, flipping egg. 26 ton, 26 ton. And you're thinking, well, this is been moved 20 miles, and I'm not going to go with the glacial option now. 20 miles, 10 miles, 10 miles, 10 miles. I'm not going to go with the glacial option on this one, like lots of the Sarsen stones and the Salisbury plain or whatever. It's a rather interesting thing, and maybe if we don't do this, I wanted to bring this to you today to just say this is here, and it's a wow factor. And can I just mention one thing, right? I think the point of Andy, maybe it's been shaped in the medieval period, or maybe it's been reshaped. It's been there for a long time. What did people think of this? What was their relationship with it? Had it been painted? Was there carvings on it later on? But one thing I would say is this is not a Neolithic monument. It's a Neolithic monument. It's a Bronze Age monument. It's an Iron Age monument. It's a Roman era monument. It's a medieval monument. And I tell you what, it's a modern monument. This monument is still with us today. And that is a time capsule of all those changes that we've seen over the years. And that's what we've attempted to do today. I'm going to finish the lecture today. We're going to do Otzi the Iceman next week. And we're loving this today. And we've put a lot into today. And thanks for everybody's contributions, including Margaret, as usual. And thank you very much. So we're going to start off with, we're going to do Margaret, David, and Pat. So Margaret, anything you'd like to say?
Well, I was just listening to you talking about what they did to the bones that they took out of the barrows. They exhumed just the skull and the long bones. Was that right?
In some cases, yes, or they would take them all out and articulate them. And I think it's a modern thing as well, which I totally disapprove of. But obviously, it's so if we go back to that, I don't know if we can. It was a bit of a mix, really, wasn't it, about the bones?
Well,
what's your point?
On the picture, it shows like a horse-drawn barrow, is it? I didn't see the horse, but it looked like a barrow that a horse pulled. Did they use that to put the bones in, to take and examine somewhere else?
I'm going to say sometimes, and I'm going to say we don't really know, but I think we do. Bateman tells you about it. The thing is, Bateman tells you about everything that's happening. And it's sort of, here we go. Bateman's descriptions of burials and their settings were usually well and clearly written. He dealt carefully with inhumations, usually preserving the skulls and long bones. Maybe that means that the inhumations preserved the skulls and the long bones rather than the archaeologists preserving them. Perfect skeletons were removed and rearticulated. So all of it was rearticulated. Usually, I think he's saying that the skulls and the long bones were left, but when you've got all of them, they were usually removed and articulated. Yeah, you can look at this in many different ways, Margaret.
So
but there is one thing, Margaret. He is treating these things with respect, and that's the line, isn't it?
Did they put them back again? Sorry.
We don't have that detail. I would like to think. I would like to think they did.
They must have.
So I'd like to think he did, but let's not be critical of this man. Let's just say that he's done a pretty good job.
Yeah. Okay.
We got a little bit more about Bateman in the future. So we got somebody online. They're saying thanks, Carl. Really interesting subject. So that's good. So right, okay, David.
No, fine, thank you. I'm off now. Thank you. Bye, everybody.
Anyway, thanks for your time,
Bye,
David.
Everybody,
And we'll see you next week.
Yeah.
Thank you, David. Thank you. Who else have we got now? Let's do Pat, because Pat's already gone to sleep. Yeah, Pat is now a mannequin dummy that's just moving around. She's actually asleep. Like, Pat, anything you'd like to say before you go to bed?
You mentioned R below.
Didn't you do the lecture of R below?
I did, but I forgot how you spell it and where it is.
Aberlow. It's in Derbyshire.
Aberlow.
Aberlow, yeah.
LOW. And is that the burial thing? It's in Derbyshire.
No, it's a henge monument with a ditch around it. And I think Adam wants to say something now as well. So
okay,
yeah. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
It's in look it up. There's lots of stuff on the internet, and we've done a video on it as well. Anything else, Pat?
Nope, that's it.
Okay, Adam, next.
You're right, Carl. I'm just running over a few ideas to do what you said about ritual as a reaction to previous behaviour. I'm just thinking about Yola McGannog, for example, who came up with the Gorse head and everything, and he was. I'd say that man was. He was delving into. Something was trying to speak through him, like he was trying to yearn for an ancestral memory.
Yeah.
And because he was so engrossed in all of the old manuscripts and everything, he was from the depths of his soul, if you will, was able to grab out something very potent and very very moving. But people, obviously call him a forger and everything, which I think is unfair. But
which I think is unfair, yeah.
I think it's unfair, but I think as humans, we sometimes fill in the gaps, don't we? Where maybe there are gaps that need to be filled in to do so. So is that what people are doing? Is this reaction trying to fill? Sorry.
No, carry on. There's something in my head now. Quickly, go on, carry on.
Yeah, and I was just thinking, people are filling in the gaps, and basically we need. Kind of leaders to show us how we can approach this stuff helpfully without getting lost in total fantasy.
Yeah, can I just say this speaks of ritual creates ritual, and the ritual that you don't understand becomes a ritual in itself. So and in other words, what we refer to as a ritual may not have been a ritual to them. They just did it because they did it. I always quote this. There used to be a picture from 1917 on the wall of my history room in school. It had British soldiers marching to Damascus in 1917, and it said, they're there because they're there. We think we know why they're there, but the British soldiers shouldn't have even been in Damascus in 1917. Or then again, maybe they should have. But the quote is they're there because they're there. We don't always need answers. And sometimes there doesn't need to be answers. Do you know when you said when you're in a relationship and the other person says you're overanalyzing it? Maybe you bloody are. So sometimes, Adam, it's what you said about Yolo Margonog was very kind, and I completely agree with you. I agree with you. Sometimes we're overcritical, and that can be a problem as well. And yes, we do seek answers, but when you're offered the evidence, some people go over the top, and then they go into fantasy. So you're really right there. Yeah. Is that you? Is that you? Good, Adam?
That's all good. Great stuff. Thank you very much.
Good. My pleasure. My pleasure. Right. Andy, babes.
No, I think everyone's covered most of the things I was thinking of. Thank you very much.
Good. I think we've got Pete and Anne left, and then we'll call it a day. Right. Peter S.
No,
don't forget,
nothing
Peter.
for me. No, very good. Excellent.
Okay, Pete. I'll be seeing you tomorrow anyway, 11 o'clock. Don't be late as usual. You're always late. And then finally, who's left? Who haven't we done? Anne.
I'm glad you said we're going to learn some more about this chap Bateman. He seemed, from the bits you put down, where he developed the language and he was trying to work out distribution and poetry and all sorts of things. I mean, he sounds a remarkable, very interesting man.
Yeah, but he is going on the back of Rook and the likes of Peg. Peg's the one who gives us the distribution stuff, but he's actually working on the backs of these people, and he's using the local northern archaeology to push him forward, and that is which is the northern powerhouse of archaeology is a completely different powerhouse from down the south. Yeah, and again, it's like that north-south divide. We didn't think we were going to see it in archaeology today, but we have. It's there. It's obvious. And in many ways, even today, I do see it myself. There's a divide in archaeology still.
Would you say that a pilgrimage is a ritual kind of thing?
A pilgrimage is a ritual if you know why you're doing it. If you don't know why you're doing it, it's not a ritual. But then again, some people say it can be a ritual. But if you don't know why you're doing the ritual, this is the thing. If you're deliberately doing it and you're ritualistically doing it and you know what you're doing and it's a ritual, if you're just doing it for the sake of it, like Forrest Gump, and he turns around and says, "Why are you doing this, Forrest? I'm going home."
But I think we've been doing them for thousands of years, haven't we?
Yes. But we explain why we're doing the rituals, but sometimes we don't know why the hell we're doing them.
Well, they said people travel to Stonehenge from the length and breadth of the island.
But they will tell you why they're doing it. Some people do it and they don't know why they're doing it. So you ask some people why they smoke. I don't know why I'm doing it. Some people smoke and they tell you why they're doing it. We're doing it because I got nerves.
Life is a ritual, isn't it?
Yeah, doing this every Tuesday evening is a bloody ritual. I gotta listen to Andy. Oh, we've done Andy, haven't we? Andy has spoken.
Yeah.
Right. So on that note, you know what we've done? We've done 10 minutes. 10. It's 10.
It's 10:15.
It's 10:15. Adam should have been in bed by now. Andy has to put the children into bed. Peter has to feed the ferrets. Pat has to change her weird glasses. Anne has to feed the cat. And David's already in bed.
You've been going that long. My cat's coming for more food.
Breakfast.
Yeah, bloody breakfast.
Yeah.
I tell you what, Karen's going to phone me up one day and said, "Stop keeping my husband for so long on a Tuesday bloody evening."
I don't think she'd be doing that. No, she's catching up with Grey's Anatomy, which I'm not watching, so it works out quite well.
You know the composer,
right, then, okay, fair enough.
The composer that wrote Pirates of the Caribbean theme music.
John Barry?
No, Hans Zimmer, was it?
Oh, Zimmer. All right, yeah, Zimmer. Of course,
the music for Pirates of the Caribbean. He makes his living from writing jingles.
Yeah, that's good.
Jingles.
Good money in that.
Yeah, that'll be his bread and butter, won't it?
Well,
like
it might be the big amount. Voiceover artists earn a lot of money, and jingle writers do as well, because it's this short piece and it's used over and over and over and over again.
Yeah. But that film score was, it was amazing, wasn't it?
Mm.
Yes. I do listen back to that bit, and there's hope in the acting world. Brendan Fraser getting an Oscar, and his performance was unbelievable. But that's I don't even know why we got onto that. But anyway, so yeah, we got to mention Brendan Fraser because got proud of him. Anyway, good. On that note, we're going to call it a day. So I'm going to say good night to. If nobody else has got anything else to say, I'm going to say good night to Andy, Adam, Anne, and then we move on to Margaret, Pat, and Peter. Again, alphabetical order. Thank you very much for joining me. Next week, Otzi the Iceman. Thank you very much. Good
Thanks.
night.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.
No night, folks. No night, folks. It's only you left now, Pat. Flip.
I know. Trying to figure out how to get out.
Yeah, I gotta try to get out. I gotta have some. I gotta have.
There it is.
I gotta have some macaroni cheese now. Good.
Okay. Eat well. Good
I
night.
will. Night night.
Eat well.
Bye bye. Anyway, and also Pazoo. I'm liking this on your online. Thank you, Pazoo. Thanks, Carl. Really interesting subjects. And Pazoo said, thanks also for the Doggerland video you pointed out at last week. Interesting to hear about some of the finds. Anyone got any videos they want to watch, then and the subjects, and I can direct them to see if we've covered it. We've covered so many different things. And we've now got 3 people joining us online. Right, where have you been for the last 2 hours and a half, basically? And has it been 2 hours? 8 to 9, 9 to 10. Bloody hell, 2 hours, 45 minutes. Anyway, don't forget to like and subscribe. The lecture's at an end. If anyone wants to say something, they need to say it now. If anyone wants to ask something about the Neolithic period, they need to say it now. I'm looking at the chat box, nothing in the chat box. That's fine. That's all good. And what we're going to do, thank you, Pazoo. Dane Holes, please. Pazoo. Oh, Dane Holes. Right. Pazoo, right, have I got this right? Dane Holes, D-A-N-E Holes, Dane Holes, right? Okay, is that what they are? Right, okay. I haven't done Dane Holes, right? So Pazoo, we're gonna have to look at Dane Holes. I've no idea what Dane Holes are, but I'm gonna look at this one up and see if I can make a thing on it, and we'll give it a go. Anyway, so what we're gonna do, Pazoo, I think is Pazoo. The 3 of you online, anyone got anything else to say it now. If not, don't forget to like and subscribe. This is every Tuesday evening at just after 7:30, after I've connected and all the bloody rest of it. Usually by about 7:40 we're flowing, and tomorrow evening we've got another one of these, but obviously it's going to be a little bit condensed because only for an hour and a half. And anyway, Pazoo, if you've been with us for the whole thing, then thank you very much. You're appreciated, Pazoo, as well. Anyway, I'm going to go now. So, and also, if anyone's interested, this is my website, right? And this is my website, and if you're interested, look me up on the internet. So obviously I've got a TikTok account as well, and look me up. And also, if anyone wants to join these classes, right? If anyone wants to join these classes, it was £30 for 2 months, and obviously you get to take part. And and I think I'm just going to put the link on for that as well. I'm just going to make sure that we've got the link on, and it's just going to see if I've got this here. Just make sure. There we go. If I copy and paste this, right, okay. If you're interested, this is my my archaeology website. Yes, I'm an archaeologist with a website. as well as an archaeologist, as well as an actor for the website. So if anyone's interested in my books, well, some of them are on here anyway. This is the archaeology play. If you want to join us and sign up on on these classes, then you're very, very welcome. I've got a life. I've got to finish, and we're going to call it a day. So anyway, in Welsh, it's Nos da chi, which means a good night, and Amar o hyd, which is a new sort of saying in Welsh, which means still here. Well, we're still here, aren't we? So anyway, I'm off. And anyone who's just signed up, don't forget to like and subscribe. I'm going. I keep saying I'm going. In Welsh, we've got now in a minute. I'm going now in a minute, which could mean any time. And I'm just going to double check something. Right. I'm out of here. Good night.